Hello everyone, this is Yamin and welcome to Laravel tutorials for beginners. Now in this tutorial I am going to show you how you can update data in Laravel. So first of all we'll create an update button over here, and if someone click that update button then it will take the user to another page with that certain raw data, and the user will be able to update that data. So for it, let's go back to our code and we directly go to our display.blade.php. And from here we are actually showing all the data in our view. So here you can see student name, email, image and delete. So we are going to add another td over here and we'll name it as update. And if we save it and if we now refresh, now let's also add the update button for each of the data. So here you can see we use a for each loop over here to show all the student data, and here you can see the delete button. So let me just copy this td and I'll paste it over here, and instead of delete I'm just going to say over here update. And if you save it and if you now refresh, here you can see the update option over here. So now what we want is that if someone click this update button, it will take this specific user's ID. So let's go back to our code, and here you can see that just like delete, we write over here student ID. Let me just explain it to you. Here you can see for each $data as student. So using this $student, we are getting the student name and student email. So if we use this, we'll be able to get the student ID if someone click the update button. Now we need to give a URL for this update. Let's say over here update underscore view. So first of all we need to create a view, update view, so that we can update that certain data. So now let's go back to our web.php and create this URL. So let's go to web.php, and so here let me just copy this route, Ctrl C and Ctrl V, and here our route will be get, and here instead of delete we are going to say here update underscore view, which we just write in our display.blade.php. So we also need to give a function name over here, and we are going to say here update underscore view as well. So now let's save it and we'll go to our home controller and create this update view function. So let's go to our home controller and let me just directly go down, and here I am just going to say public function update underscore view, and inside it we are going to say $id, and we will give 2-second bracket over here. Now let me just explain you something, is that if someone click this update button, then it will get the student ID and send this ID to our web.php, and our route, this route will send this ID to our update view function, which is inside home controller. So here we need to declare a variable over here. Let's just say here student. You can declare any variable you want. Let's say student equal to, now we need to say our table name, which is student. And let me just show you my table over here. If I go to my database, and here you can see my table name is student, and inside student we have the name, email and the image over here. So here first of all we need to say over here our table name, which is student, then we need to give 2 double colon find, and inside this first bracket we need to say $id. Now since we are using the student table, so we also need to add the student model at the top, which I already mentioned. Over here you can see use app / models / student. So let me just explain you this line. So what will happen is that it will first of all find the specific ID, and it will search for that ID in the student table and store that data in this $student variable. So let's say if someone click this update button, then it will get this ID. If you go to our database, here you can see, let's just consider the ID is 2. So it will get the specific ID of the student and store their data in this student variable. So after this we need to return a view. So we'll say return view, and inside this single quotation we need to mention a blade name. Let's say update underscore page, and we also need to send the student variable to this view. So here we need to say compact, then we need to give two first bracket and inside it two single quotation and we'll say student. So now we are actually sending the student data to our this view. Now we do not have this update page in our view, so we need to create this update underscore page. So for it we'll just right click on our views, then click new file, and here we are going to say update underscore page dot plate dot php. So now save it, Ctrl S, and then save. Now here let me just say normal HTML, and let's just say here inside h1 let's say update page. Now if you save it and let me just refresh over here, and if you now click this update button, it will take us to another page. Let's click it. So here you can see it says update page, and here at the URL you can see the ID over here as well. Here you can see ID is 4, and if you go to our database, here you can see for ID 4 the name is user. So now before we update the data for ID 4, we need to first show their like name, email, or the image. So for it, let's just first show their data over here. So for it, we'll go to our update page.blade.php, and if you go to our home controller, here you can see we are sending the student variable from here from the controller. So if we just say over here inside 2 bracket, if we say dollar student, then this arrow sign, and if we say name, and here you can see the name. Now this name is coming from the database. Over here you can see name, here you can see email. So if you now save it, and now if we just refresh over here you can see the username, which is user. Now if you want to get the email and the image, you also need to do the same. Let me just show you for the email and the image as well. So let me copy it and I'll paste it over here 2 times. Now this one will be for email, and if you save it and let me just refresh over here you can see the username, then user email, and another user which I just write over here. Now in order to show image, you need to do something different. In order to show image, you need to use image tag over here, and inside this source we need to give, here you can see, let's say over here image. Now if we save it and if we refresh over here, it will not show us the image. Let me just show you. Here you can see there is no image. The thing is, we saved our image inside our public folder, and then inside public we have another folder called student, and inside this folder we saved our image. So here before this we need to give a slash, and here we need to say that folder name, which was student. And if you now save it, Ctrl S, and if you now refresh over here, okay, let me just give another slash before this. If you now save it and if you refresh, so here you can see we are able to see the image. Normally you don't have to give this slash, but sometimes it may create some problem, so give this slash. So obviously we cannot edit their data from here like this, so we need to show their name and the image in a way so that we can update their data. So for it, let me just comment them out, and after this now in order to update their data, we need to have them in input field, right? So first of all, let's just declare a form, and inside this form let's declare a div, and let's say here level, let's say here label is equal to student name, and after label let's say here input type will be text, and let's say name is equal to name, and we will say here value. Now if we save it, let me just refresh over here. Let me show you how it looks. So here you can see the student name over here, and there is no student name inside it. So for showing the specific student name that we have in the URL, here you can see ID 4, we just need to say here inside this value, let me just copy this on dollar student name, Ctrl C, and I'll paste it over here. And if you now save it and if you now refresh over here you can see we can see the student name, and you can also like change their name as well. So after this we'll get the student email. So let me just copy this on Ctrl C and Ctrl V, and here we are going to say email, and here name is equal to, it will be, let's say, email, and their value student email. So if we save it and if we refresh now, here you can see the student email and student name. Now we'll show the student image over here as well. So for it, let's just declare another div, and here inside this label we're going to say old image. So first of all, we'll show the old image that we have in the database. So we do not require this input field right now. We are just going to say here image, and inside this source, let me just copy this. Let me just copy this full image tag over here. Ctrl C, then Ctrl V, and let me also just mention the height and width, because image height and width is too big. Let's say height, and width, let's say it will be 120 width, and height will be the same. Now if we save it and if we refresh, so here you can see we have the student name, student email, and the old image. Now we can edit the name or the email as well, but how we are going to edit the image? So for it, we'll go back to our code again, and here we are just going to mention another div over here. So let me copy it and paste it over here, and here in the label we are going to say change the image, and here we are going to remove this image tag, and here we are going to say input type. So input type for it will be file, and let's say name is equal to file. So now if we save it and if we refresh now, here you can see we have a change the image, choose file option over here. So we'll be able to change choose the image from our file. So now we need a submit button over here. So let's go back to our code again, and here let me just declare another div, and inside this div we will say input type will be submit, and let's remove this name, and let's say here value, it will be update. And if we save it and if we now refresh, here you can see we have an update button over here. Now in order to update their data, we need to go back to our code again, and here you can see that we mention a form over here. So we need to mention the action, and then after action we need to mention the method, and after method we need to mention one more thing, which is enc type. Now why enc type? Because over here we want to upload a file from here. So if we want to upload any file type things, then you need to use enc type. So the enc type will be multipart slash form, then this minus data. So after enc type we need to say here method will be post, because we want to update the data in the database, and here in the action we need to mention a URL. So here we are going to say URL, and we need to give a URL name. Let's say here we'll just say update, and after this update URL we also need to mention the student ID, for which student we want to update the respective data. So here we are just going to say a comma, then here we are going to say student, then this arrow sign will say ID. So we are actually sending the specific student ID to this URL. So now we'll go to our web.php and create this URL, update URL. So let's go to web.php, and let me just copy this, Ctrl C, and paste it over here. And here you can see, first of all we need to change this get method. We need to say over here post, and here our URL name was update, and we are also sending the ID just like before. Here you can see we are sending the student ID, and we are catching the ID over here, and we also need to mention the function name. Let's say we'll use the function name as update. After saving it, we need to go to our home controller and create this update function. So let's go to our home controller, and here I'm going to say public function, then update, and inside it we are going to say $id. First of all we want to catch the $id, and not only we have to say $id, we also need to say something else, which is request $request, then a comma. Now why request $request? Because we are not only on to send this id, we also actually want to catch the student name, email, and the image file as well. So for it we need to use request $request. So after this, just like before, we find the specific student id, so we also need to do the same. So we need to say over here, declare a variable student. You can declare any variable over here, and then equal. Here we need to say the table name, which is student, which I mentioned before, then find, then inside it we will say $id. So it means this variable contains the specific student data. So after this we are going to say $student. Now this $student is actually this one. Okay, so then we need to give this arrow sign. And here let me just go to my database, and if you go to database, here you can see the name, email, and image. So we need to say here name, which came from the database. Then we'll give a equal sign, and here we're going to say this $request, and after it we will give a arrow sign, and after request we need to mention the name that we are getting from update underscore page.blade.php, and here you can see name is equal to name is as well. So here I'm going to say name, and for email it is actually the same. So let me copy it and paste it over here, and I'm going to say here email, and for email in the update page the name of email as well. And after email we actually have the image, student image, but we'll update the student image later. Let's just say here $student, then this arrow sign, I'm going to say save. And after saving the data we want to stay on the same page. Let's say, so we'll say return, then redirect, this first bracket, this arrow sign, back. So after updating the data we will stay on the same page. So now let's save it, and if we now refresh over here, and instead of user, let's say here user test, and here in the email let's say email test@gmail.com. Now if we click this update button, here you can see it is reloading. Okay, page expired. So this error only happens when we forget to write @csrf in the over here in the after the form. So here we did not mention @csrf. So now it will not give us an error. So let me save it over here, and let me just go back to our view page. Here now let's just click this update button. Now here in the student name let's say user test, and let's say in the email let's say user test as well. Now if we now click the update button, here you can see it's reloading and it's done. And here you can see, now if you now refresh this page, you will see the student name user test as well. Now if you go to our database and if you refresh over here, here you can see name is user test and email is user test@gmail.com. Now let's go back to our code and write some code so that we can also update our image. So for it we need to go back to our code and we need to go to our home controller.php, and after this email we are going to say another variable, let's say $image, then we are going to say equal, then we'll say $request, this arrow sign will say file. Now this image is actually a variable and request file. Now this file is actually coming from our user underscore page.blade.php, and here you can see name is equal to file. So after getting the file in this image variable, we are going to declare another variable. We'll say $image name equal, we are going to mention a function which is called time, then we are going to give a dot, then two single quotation, and inside it we are going to give another dot, and after this single quotation we'll give another dot, And after this we need to mention this $image variable. Let me just copy it and paste it over here, and then we'll give this arrow sign and we'll say get client original, capital ORIGI original, then extension. Here you can see it is already suggesting us this. So after this we need to give to first bracket. So this line is actually responsible for giving the image a unique name. So I'll explain the line again later. Let me just finish this first. So after this line we need to write another line. We'll say here $request, then this arrow sign, file, then again another arrow sign, then we'll say move, and inside these two first bracket we are going to give two single quotation, and inside it we need to say the folder name where we are actually saving our image, which is student. Now if you go to a public folder, inside public we have our student folder, and here we are actually saving their image. So after updating, obviously we need to keep the image in the same folder. So here we will give a comma, and then we are going to say this image name. So let's say here $image name. Now this variable is actually this one. Okay. So after this we have just only one line left, which is $student, this arrow sign, image, just like before. Then we'll give a equal sign. Now this image, this name is actually coming from the database. Here you can see name is image. So here we are going to say this variable $image name. So paste it over here, and after this we are actually saving the data. So let me just explain this 4 line first. Here you can see, first of all, we are actually getting the file and storing that file in this image variable, and after this we declare another image name over here, and here we declare a time function, and then we mention this file over here. You can see, so this line is actually will give the image a unique name depending on the using this time function actually. So every image in the database will have a unique name. So after this we are requesting that file to move to our student folder using this name. Here you can see $image name. So that folder file name will be this one, and in the end we are saving that image name in our database table and then saving it. So now let me just save it, and if we just go back to our browser over here, and let me just refresh over here, and this time let me just choose the image downloads, and from here let me just choose the image. So here you can see yummy.png. So now if I click this update button, here you can see it is reloading, and here you can see the image is changed. Now if you go to our database, obviously here it will also be changed. So now let me just show you one more thing, is that let's say we just change the username only, and if we now click the update button, it will give us an error that call to a member function get client original extension on null. Now the thing is, the user may or may not always want to update the image from here. So this file name might be empty sometime. So for it we need to give a if condition over here in the update function. So after this image request file, we are going to say here if, then inside this we are going to say $image, and we'll give 2 bracket over here, and inside it let me just cut this portion of code, Ctrl X, and we'll have that code inside this second bracket. So if there is any image, only then it will execute this 3 line of code, otherwise it will not execute this 3 line of code. So now if we save it, and let me just refresh over here. Now let's say this time we only want to update the user email. Let's say just test@gmail.com, and if you now click update, it will not give us any error. So here you can see it's reloading and it didn't give us any error and the email name is changed. Now if you go to database and if you refresh over here, here you can see the email name is changed. Now if you go to our only view page and press enter, here you can see the certain image over here as well. So this is how you can update data in Laravel. So if you face any problem or any confusion, then let me know in the comment section. Also tell me how much you like this video, and if you like the video, then you can obviously subscribe this channel to show me some support. So thanks again for watching. Stay tuned and stay healthy.